Have we really found top tier Mike Flanagan, or have we found the nevermore of his franchises? What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium's spoiler-filled discussion of the new Netflix original series, The Fall of the House of the Usher. This is a series based off the Edgar Allan Poe short story and is, of course, created by Mike Flanagan. Okay, guys, just a word of warning. As I usually say, this is a spoiler discussion, so it will contain a lot of stuff. Probably stuff we're going to forget because it is a very dense TV series. But yeah, just to make you aware that it's going to be a spoiler discussion. Now, with that said, I would usually do these by myself, but somebody that I had to bring in, you know this person very well from my podcast, is somebody that I consider, a Poe head, somebody that's really in love with Edgar Allan Poe, loves like his material, loves Roger Corman, and that's where a lot of Poe's materials most known for is Vincent Price and of course Roger Corman. And of course Mike Flanagan is a creator and a writer that has basically become this era's like tour de force of horror franchises of series. He's basically taken series after series after series and created a legacy that is something truly unique. And before we get into the actual story of The Fall of the House of the Usher, I'm bringing back Triv from Trivial Theater. Triv, how the hell are you?
I love Poe, man.
Now, just to let you know, I did sacrifice your soul, so you may not make it to the entire episode. So just be warned. I did brick you. I did put you in a brick layer wall. With jingle bells on you and everything. So sorry, Triv.
Damn it,
I had to be the Raven of this.
Yeah, I mean, as long as I don't go out like a total bitch, I think it'll probably be okay. Like, do I at least have a decent end? And by the way, you didn't even tell me about this. I just like purchased stuff that's not coming until November. Now I'm not going to be here to enjoy it.
Well, I mean, you saw that bottle of drink that I gave you, right? Right before we recorded? You don't remember drinking it?
I'm a 2D avatar. I don't drink.
I mean, okay, so I gave you some of the dip from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh, you evil bastard. Ugh,
I know,
fine.
Right? You'd be melting
I
away.
never said that this was a deal.
Sure.
And
sure.
I haven't seen any, because it's Poe, his ravens are his thing. I have not seen any ravens.
I'm sure you'll find that pit and pendulum in your life somewhere. Somewhere indeed.
Is that how I'm going out?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Well, you know what?
I always slice you in half.
Yay! Well, you know what? I always enjoyed having my intestines like connect my upper half to my lower half, so I can, drag myself around.
Right.
It's quite an attention. It's quite a conversation starter.
Right. So, with that said, The Fall of the House of the Usher is a well-known, well-respected, beloved story. It is a story of the Usher family who basically fall to their demise one by one.
Spoilers.
And in essence, well, I mean,
if you
read if you read the book, you kind of know this for a fact. But the Fall of the House of the Usher is basically about the Usher family and the kind of like their fall from grace, their kind of wheelings and dealings, and basically, to get into synopsis, kind of the non-spoiler take, but synopsis because we'll get into a lot of spoilers with this series because there's 8 hour-long episodes. Is a new take on these Edgar Allan Poe story, but it's basically about a pharmaceutical company run by this family called the Usher family, and they basically are like I can't remember the name of the family, but they're very similar to the family that is in if you've ever seen Dope Sick or on Hulu, or if you've ever seen, there was another show that was based off of it. It's the pharmaceutical company that basically created the opioid crisis in, I think, the 80s and 90s, I think it was, or the 2000s.
Well, kind of that. I mean, pretty much the entire. But
you know what
time.
I'm talking about? Yeah, the family that basically caused a lot of strife and like very poor households and stuff like that. And so after watching this series, that's what Mike Flanagan is crimping off of. He's crimping off the idea of using the story of Edgar Allan Poe and the richness of his, legacy and stuff like that, but using it as a very modern take with a lot of modern civilizations and modern ideologies, and using it to that effect. So you have, Roderick Usher, who's played by Bruce Greenwood, his family, who is in various states of trying to create a longevity style world with like their life and stuff like that, with with like experiments and drug use and stuff like that, but they're corrupt. They're a dangerous group of individuals. And as we see, a character played by Carla Gugino comes into the mix, and they, it's not really spoiler. They start, dying one by one. And
to
it basically
put it mildly,
is
with the family, the apples don't fall far from the tree.
exactly. And these people are terrible individuals. I mean, if you look at who they are, but you have Henry Thomas, you have Mary McDonnell, you have Willa Fitzgerald, Malcolm Goodwin, Tiana Miller, Rahul Kohli, Kate Siegel, and stuff like that. A lot of people that you would recognize from a lot of Bruce Greenwood's story, Mike Flanagan's other movies and TV shows that he's done. And it basically is just that. It's just about what would happen if a group of individuals took the reins of a pharmaceutical company, took it to its heights, were very corrupt, and then they basically was it like Roost comes home to roost or whatever, the chickens come home to roost.
Yeah, chickens come home to roost.
Yeah, and the reason I brought you on to talk about this, Triv, because you know Edgar Allan Poe a lot better than I do. One of the crazy things about this series is it goes far beyond just the fall of the House of the Usher. I think the House of the Usher is the main storyline, but this is a series, this is again spoiler territory. This is a series that deals with a lot of Poe stories, a lot of his short stories. Every character is named after a specific story in his biography of stories. Every story that plays out in each episode is based off one of his most famous stories, and it's so, you can attest to this, Triv, it's so intertwined with what Poe is explaining to the audience, because if you look at it, his stories are very much people who long for existence, people who do bad things, people that get put into sad, depressing situations. And I guess we'll start out with what's your kind of relations to Poe as an author, and like you were explaining to me about how a lot of times you'll watch shows or watch movies or something like that, and there's like a deep meaning, Twilight Zone for instance, but you say that his stories were a little more simplified when it came to like what the justifications of what they were doing. So let's get into that, like your kind of early takings on Poe before we get into this series as a whole.
Well, I mean, I'm no expert by any stretch. My
You know
dealings,
more than I do.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but my dealings really are honestly the Roger Corman Poe movies with Vincent Price. So there's Tomb of Ligeia, The Black Cat, House of Usher, The Raven,
Murder Rue Morgue, or Murders
Murders at the Rue Morgue. I'm not sure if that's a Corman one. I don't remember 100%. But there's 6. Oh, and the Mask of the Red Death.
Right.
So there's a series of 6 of them. He did 6, and they took he took quite a few liberties with the way that they went to make them more entertaining and to turn them around quicker, because Corman was known for turning things around pretty quickly.
Yeah, being real cheap in his kind of like filming.
Well, he knew how to stretch a buck. Cheap, yes, but they're still very they're beautiful movies. They're really pretty awesome.
Right.
And he knew how to work in spaces and how to make the dollar go. But a lot of from that, and you kind of go and look at the source materials and such, a lot of Poe's stories deal with the sins of the father being heaped upon the kids, which is a major point of these movies or of these episodes. A lot of it is like illness of various natures. In House of Usher, both Roderick and Madeline are struck, and those are the twins that are kind of at the center of this whole thing. They're both struck with various ailments. They can only eat certain foods. They're mentally, they're very fragile. There's a lot of stuff that kind of goes with that. A lot of them are unable to reproduce. There's not very many offspring from anything. There's a lot of really weird death. Oh, Pit and the Pendulum was the other one that Corman did. I apologize.
He didn't do Mask of Red Death?
I think he did Mask of the Red Death. I don't think he did Rue Morgue. I'm pretty sure. But like I say, it's been a long time since I've seen that one. But yeah, so that's a lot of really bad things happen to anyone that interacts with these people. But the people that are innocent do tend to get out alive by and large. There's a lot of, it's Gothic horror, or it's based in Gothic horror, so there's a lot of melancholy, and there's a lot of death. There's a lot of longing and despair, and kind of like that end of the emotional spectrum.
Well, I was gonna say the thing about we talk about this all the time in the Twilight Zone. A lot of if you go and read Edgar Allan Poe's like life and his how he came up with a lot of his stories, like Rod Serling, a lot of his stories were based off his experiences in life, whether it be his wife who died, I think of cholera, however you say it,
She
or
died
what
of
was it?
let
Was
me
it
look it up real
cholera? It was she died of something, some like disease back in the 1800s or whatever it was. While you're looking at that up, the stories that play out, especially from Edgar Allan Poe, you look at it from Stephen King, you look at it from all these like great authors, anybody you could think of, and they're usually experiences that are created from things that they dealt with. Like, for instance, Rod Serling dealt with a lot of human issues and stuff like that. Being from the war, Edgar Allan Poe is dealing with a lot of issues with like sick family members and people that were not very good people, and that's what's happening in a lot of his stories. You just see it like it feels very personal, from what he's written and what I've seen. Like I've read The Raven before. It's a pretty famous story, but it's about a lost woman. Somebody's pining over someone that died, and I don't know how you feel about that. So
I mean, his stuff is, I guess, the one word that's coming up in what I'm looking up about him is macabre, and that's like probably the best way
yeah,
to do it. It's like Greek tragedies; nothing ever ends happily, and if you get
right,
out, you get out by the skin of your teeth. Like the in like the what's behind me, the House of Usher,
yeah,
in the book and in the Corman movie, the house literally collapses at the end, and that comes back
right,
into play here as well.
yeah.
But
But yeah, like with Charles Dickens, you see it the same way with the humanities and dealing with like the poor versus the rich, and the rich eat the poor eat the rich, or the rich eat the poor,
Rich eat
however.
the poor, yeah.
Yeah, Charles Dickens did it, but it's the same thing here. It's like a lot of life experiences are really played well into Edgar Allan Poe stories, and I think that's what as we've seen in with like the who wrote the House on the Haunting of Hill House, was it
Shirley Jackson.
Shirley Jackson? And you
Yep.
see it with like Stephen King stories that Mike Flanagan has written and directed, and you see it with like Midnight Mass, which was an original creation. The guy gets the ideas behind what makes like an Edgar Allan Poe story or Stephen King story or Shirley Jackson story work. Now, with that said, going into this series, knowing everything we know about who Mike Flanagan is, what he's done, Oculus, Honey of Hill House, stuff like that, did you expect this series to be another great series, or do you ever find that you go into the series a little, maybe not excited, but maybe a little trepidation because this is a big undertaking? This is the last series Mike Flanagan's doing for Netflix. He's going on to like Paramount or whatever, or Universal or whatever he
Mm-hmm.
is. But you got to wonder if like the ambition that Mike Flanagan has as a creator, and using the inspiration of Edgar Allan Poe and doing what his like own take and spin on it, you got to feel like maybe there's going to be a time where there's going to be a step up or a misstep for Mike Flanagan. And as much as I like him as a creator, there's always that fear that he's going to do, and especially with Edgar Allan Poe. We've seen it in the past. There's some pretty crappy Edgar Allan Poe adaptations, and not a lot, but there's some pretty
No,
bad ones.
oh
And
yeah. I mean,
um,
you could look at depending upon how you look at like Cormans, and I apologize. That's kind of really my point of reference with these, but
no, it's fine.
you
I mean,
could,
they're famous. They're famous,
yeah.
movies. So
I mean,
it's
you could look at
impressed.
those, and I mean, they took tons of liberties, especially with the
Yeah.
likes of Mask of the Red Death. That one was
Right.
like an inch of the actual Poe story, and then it was just the structure beyond the structure, everything was changed. So I mean, you could
Right.
look at those if you're actually a Poe fan and go, okay, really, we're going in this direction? Are you kidding me? But like with any adaptation, it is about that artistic understanding and changing it and making it fit whatever it is while maintaining the integrity of the original. And not everybody
Yeah.
does that, but I do think, I mean, whether you're talking about the use of Bible stories in a Midnight Mass, or House on Haunted Hill, or not House on Haunted Hill, The Haunting of Hill House,
Yeah.
whatever it might be, the best ones. I mean, look at The Shining. As much as King and King fans may not like that version, it is an amazing movie. It's well done, and it cover. I know you don't agree, but it's well put together for what it is. It's entertaining.
Yeah.
It stood the test of time, and the best
Well,
stuff does.
right. Well, the one thing I found that was funny is when the last Mike Flanagan's pretty much put a series out every year since he's been with Netflix.
Wow.
And like, yeah, I was looking up. It's pretty crazy for the most part. I mean, I think he's been doing it since like 2017 or whatever. But the series that he put out last year was, of course, called The Midnight Club, and it's, of course, based off of Christopher. I think it was Christopher Pike, if I remember.
That's what you said the other night. Yeah.
Yeah, it's based off his book series, and I truly liked it because I'm a huge fan of Christopher Pike. I think it's Christopher Pike, but I'm a huge fan of his stuff, especially one that he tells about a kid that has a videotape and can like see the lot. I think he wrote like can see the lottery or whatever, and I found it really fascinating. And it's funny because I don't think you said you have seen it, but
no,
like for instance, the wife, the step wife or whatever in the Fall of the House of Usher was a main character in, of course, that series. And there's been other characters that have been pulled from that, his staple of like, typical people that are in his movies and shows and stuff like that. But I like the fact that he is able to take material that is very well known and very respected and put his own spin on it, because if you watch this series, it's not it's a adaptation that follows the blueprint of what the House of the Usher story is.
To some extent, some extent, yes, but it follows like the last one is really quite hardcore in the house, or the House of Usher.
Yeah,
the rest of it, like the overall, the title and stuff and the characters are based on that, but the structure of each individual episode is really based on a Poe work overall.
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, if you think about it, what Mike Flanagan is doing here, and this is a spoiler review, is he is using outlines for each of Poe's stories and kind of doing like a kind of what's that word called, like when you like a remix almost of all his stories, and kind of intertwining them and kind of injecting some of the most famous stories that Poe ever wrote into this story of the Fall of the House of the Usher. And that's a pretty genius thing to do. Now, whether it works, we're going to tell you in a second.
Oh, yeah.
But the biggest thing you have to realize is if a studio or a company like Netflix or Paramount or whoever it is, if they truly believe in something, if they don't believe in something, you're not going to hear about it till the day of the release. But if they truly believe in it and it's as good as they hope it is, they're going to let the critics and reviewers see it early. So, I seen it like a week earlier or whatever is different. But the review for this series was posted to embargo, which is embargo means like the date you can post your review, was like the 25th of September, the 26th, the 22nd of September. You don't do that unless you have true faith that your franchise or your series or whatever is truly remarkable. And once again, going as a reviewer and knowing the embargoes, it's a very clear indication that they knew they had something special on their hands, and that they knew Mike Flanagan has made something truly unique and truly special. But there is still trepidation that it's, critics, people reviewing, that are the ones who hype up stuff, and sometimes it doesn't work. And that's why I was curious about what you thought, because, there's still that worry that it's not going to be very good, that it's going to be overhyped. Yeah. But I mean, did you feel the same way, or did you just go, I'm just going to see if this turns out good? Like, how did you feel about that? Because, it's one of those things where the 22nd of September, the 25th of September is 3 weeks early, 3 weeks before it releases. And that's a lot of time.
Oh, huge amount of time.
Yeah.
So. I mean, I'm not, like, the way that I was really introduced to Mike Flanagan was Dr. Sleep. And then Midnight Mass and House on Haunted Hill, or The Haunting of Hill House. God, that's not a bad. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, the Haunting of Hill House, and then a little bit of Bly Manor. I didn't get as far into that one, and not that's Anyway, but knowing those pieces and knowing that he's a solid director at his core, like he doesn't cut corners. He doesn't take gambles on things that aren't going to pay off. If something happens in the first episode, it will be paid off by the end of the series. So from a completist perspective, there wasn't going to be unanswered questions unless they were coming back for a second season or whatever it might be.
Right.
You knew he was going to be solid. I guess I didn't see a lot beforehand. Like, I saw a couple of Twitter things about it and such, but by and large, I went into this blind. I didn't even know. Obviously, Fall of the House of Usher gives you an Edgar Allan Poe vibe, but how many things take names and there's no reliance back to the actual thing? So seeing how much Poe inspiration was in this and the research as we were watching episodes, I was sitting there going, oh my God, it's this and it's that and it's the other thing and holy balls. I hope people after looking and seeing all these different characters and the people in it and such, I hope they go research it because there is it's a treasure trove.
This is a series that I hope Jared Buckendall does an Easter egg video on because there's so much in this. But with that said, getting out of the synopsis and the early ramblings of Edgar Allan Poe and stuff like that, I'll give my review after you. But what did you think of this series? Like, how did you feel that not only did it work for you, did it work on what Mike Flanagan was doing? We'll go into spoilers on each character and episodes like that. But what is your overall take on the Fall of the House of the Usher, the Mike Flanagan series on Netflix?
Oh, it's absolutely bloody fantastic. I mean, like I say, it pays such homage to Edgar Allan Poe, and it's just it's as much a love letter as you can do without going back and using all the stories, whole hog. There's such an atmospheric nature to this that just fits that gothic horror so well. It's macabre, but it's funny, and everything connects. And like the fact that
this is darkly funny too.
Oh, it's awesome.
Black comedy a lot of times,
and I think that's a lot of where Poe was funny was in that realm of dark comedy. But like the fact that you've got like the head of the family is this pharmaceutical empire that made this pill that supposedly changed so many lives, but every one of his kids is striking out on their own, but they kind of stay within that health lane. Like, you got one peddling illegal drugs. You got one that, is the successor to the company. You've got one that does the Gwyneth Paltrow goop route. You've got, like, the party animal that's doing the stuff. You got the one that's experimenting on things. They all follow that in their father's footsteps, but in such a unique set of ways. And the actors, I mean, we'll get into it, but holy balls.
Yeah.
Was there anyone that didn't rock?
Well, we'll get into their characters. Here's why I land on the series. I think this is probably, and I don't want to sell into too fanboyish or too.
I just fangirled out.
Well, no, I don't want to be the guy that like goes, this is this and this, and you're being like, I don't know what that word is, but you're being very much in the camp of Mike Flanagan or whatever. But
I totally am. But there wasn't one episode of this thing that I didn't look forward to. Like, I hit this with the same gusto as I did Midnight Mass.
Right, and like I said, I don't want to come off as like what I'm gonna say here. Just know that this is my honest opinion. You might feel differently.
No, that's cool.
But I personally think this is one of the greatest TV shows I've ever seen, like, bar none. It's one of the most creative. It's one of the most.
You were paid to say that, weren't you?
Yes, I sure was. Even though I pay Netflix each month for a subscription that they send me the review copies.
Yeah.
In all honesty, this is probably one of the greatest horror achievements I've seen. God, it's been so long, maybe since Trick or Treat, as something that truly just kind of defines what makes good television. There is not a moment in this series that truly didn't kind of awe-inspire me. When the violence, it's graphic, but it's also interesting in the setups and the character developments and the payoff. It's so remarkable what Mike Flanagan has done here that we talk about how good Midnight Mass is and how good the House on Haunting of Hill House is and how good Dr. Sleep is and it shows you that he is a modern miracle worker when it comes to his, his filmmaking, because he is like the horror version. You would say he's in the same realm as like a Jason Blum or James, is it James Wan?
James Wan, yeah.
Yeah, James Wan, where he just creates stuff that is, even though it's adaptations, he's literally crafted something so wholly original and unique by not only combining the House of the Usher story, but taking eight other stories that Edgar Allan Poe has done and mashed them together in something that just like it's incredible to watch. And it left me dumbstruck just how good it was, because you know like once again I go, oh well, they put reviews out for the 22nd, it's getting 10s and 9s and A+s, and it probably has like a 90 something on Rotten Tomatoes. And I'm like, I've seen that before. You see that with Marvel movies. You're like, people are just excited to see this. And yes, I'm fanboying out, and I'm excited to see it because I love Mike Flanagan, because I think he's a truly remarkable creator. But this is like next level tier. This is like God tier creation, and it's, if it doesn't, the one thing that I hate is like Midnight Mass and the Honey of Hill House and stuff like that. They didn't get any like Emmy nominations, and I feel like there's so many people that could get Emmy nominations in this, and I feel like the story could get Emmy nominations. And it's brutal, but it's also darkly funny. It has a lot of heart to it. It has some of the most like insane things you'll ever see in a film, in a franchise or a show.
Yeah.
But
And
it's
they
Edgar Allan Poe
actually,
through and through.
and
Yeah, God.
they care. Like a lot of this stuff, when they adapt, they'll take the character names, and that's kind of, there's nothing to that character beyond that bit. But
Yeah,
like the way that these were crafted, the stories that kind of accompany those characters kind of go in part with those things. Like the
right.
character Prospero was a big part of the Mask of the Red Death, and what happened in that story does reflect it. And even the way that the individual characters pass, they do it. They take these Poe stories and the way that these characters were taken out, and they modernize it, but yet they keep the authenticity of the original without losing, like, the integrity of the original is there in a modern way, and it works, and it's beautiful, and I love it.
Yeah, and I gotta preface this by saying this will not be a series for everyone, because it's very violent. It's coarse with its language. It has a lot of sexual content that is very vulgar, and it's a very
but it's fun
disturbing
vulgar.
Well, but that's true. I agree with you, but it's a very disturbing story that people who can't handle, like, it's as violent as it gets. It earns its mature rating that it has. And like I said, I just want to preface that by saying if you can't handle that, then there's no reason you should be watching this or watching the show. But it's just the way it is. This is like hardcore violent. I mean, it's crazy, some of the things that happen in this. But yeah, I mean, I agree. This is like, I think something I wonder if Edgar Allan Poe would be truly inspired by, because his stories are definitely based in the time frame that he's lived, and this is brought up to a more modern setting. But the thing that I was a little worried for is the first episode. It takes some time to get going, and it definitely has the first episode vibe. It's one of those like pilot episodes, so it was something that I was a little worried about. But it's when it gets into the family, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, the seventh episodes, which deal with the family and how they die. And you're learning about this character named Verna. I guess his name Verna. It was the Carla Gugino character, who we were trying to decide what she was. We were coming up with ideas. Is she death? Is she the Raven? Is she the devil? Like, because she shows up and like she's like that character that so mysterious, but somehow is connected to the past with the young Usher family when they're raising kids and coming up in the world. And then of course the mother, and then of course the kids themselves and how that plays out. And just there's so much dense material going on in this story that it's interesting to see how it plays out. And you see it through each episode. And like you mentioned, like the first few stories are about the illegitimate children of Roderick Usher, and their characters straight out of each story. That if you go in and you look at the titles of each episode, for instance, episode 2 is called The Mask of the Red Death, which is the story of it's basically Prospero, thank you, who is the heathenist. He's in, as you said, he's in that story, and the next character is in that next story, the Morgue of the Rue Morgue or whatever.
Yep.
And I don't know, it's a remarkable thing to do. It makes me kind of jealous a little bit because it's so good, and I
Yeah.
don't know, I don't know how to. I don't know where to go. Is when I think about it, it's so insanely good.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and like you were asking where Poe would sit with this, and I mean, like I say, my understanding of Poe is relatively limited, but the man bricked people up in walls. He buried multiple people alive. Like there was some shit going on. I think he would, at least from a general perspective, appreciate what the hell's going on. So
Right. And that's what the great thing about what this series does, and you agree as well, I'm sure, is it uses that brick wall throughout a running gag throughout the story. It uses parts and pieces from whether it be the black cat, whether it be the monkey, whether it be the hedonistic orgy, whether it be, Arthur, who of course is played amazingly by Mark Hamill, who of course has his own story that is actually a story about a lost, captain and like the Arctic or whatever. It's amazing like how much depth there is to just the characters and the names of the characters, and how he's like, it almost feels like there has to be like a roadmap, and there has to be like, when they do the drawings of like each character, like when they do like the storyboarding. And I just, this is, a TV series that finished filming in 2022, but you got to imagine like how much work Mike Flanagan had to do to just map out the characters and how they fit into the story and how they relate to the other Edgar Allan Poe stories. And it kind of blows your mind when you think about it.
oh, absolutely. That's not even a question. That in mind, though, we've been holding people hostage for a bit. We should probably get into the series. Like
Well,
the
no, I
episodes.
mean that's I'm kind of like inching into
Building.
there because I just wanted to kind of talk about, because once again it's a story about a pharmaceutical company who basically made a, spoiler alert, made a pact with, I don't know if it's
Well,
not,
wait
we pretty
until
much. Well,
I
okay,
would.
so I mean the story basically plays out, and I don't want to go through it beat by beat because it's a lot of story, but
It
in
is.
essence. Yeah, in essence, we are introduced to Roderick Usher, who's played by Bruce Greenwood. He was originally supposed to be played by Frank Langella. There were some issues there,
Oh,
so Frank Langella was supposed to play the character, but I think Frank Langella got in some trouble, so they kicked him out or whatever, and brought Bruce Greenwood, who actually worked with Mike Flanagan on Gerald's Game as well as Carl Gugino, and he basically brings in his, I don't know if it's like an enemy that he created because it was his lawyer who turned into a police investigator. But anyways, he's played by Carl Lumbly, who of course played Dick Halloran and Doctor Sleep, and he tells him the story about what happens to his family and how everyone dies. And it basically leads him down to each episode is dealing with a particular member of the family, as well as the running story of who, of course, Roderick Usher is, like how he came into being, like him as a young age with his mother. All these stories are intertwining. His wife, who is, basically on the prescription drugs, the opioids, and stuff like that. But each episode, in essence, shows us an individual, whether it be the illegitimate child of the Usher family, whether it be the legitimate child of the Usher family, and their plight and what they do and how they act. And this is what makes it so genius, is just how each individual ticks. And they're all messed up individuals. They're all dark and disturbing individuals. They do terrible things. And it's interesting to see how Carla Gugino's character pops up, because she's running through like, this crazy, insane kind of chaotic thing that just runs through the thing. And I don't like, where do you I don't know, it's kind of crazy, like just even trying to explain this series because
yeah.
there's so much to it. But like, what do you think about, just the nature of like the episodes and how they play out, how they, interact with one another, how things start to kind of play out, how it starts out, that type of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, you can see from the start that Roderick and his twin sister Madeline are incredibly screwed up individuals, but that's because their mom is an incredibly screwed up individual. His kids, so he's got 2 legitimate ones, and then he's got 4 illegitimate.
Yeah.
And each one, they basically, every single one of his kids dies within what, a couple of weeks of each other.
Yeah, it takes place over 2 weeks. I think, yeah, 2 or 3 weeks, something
Yeah,
like that.
and they have a triple funeral one week, and then they have a triple funeral the next week.
Yeah.
But no,
Well, I want to say what's also great about that is the kids are more put off of the fact that people are dying than what Roderick is. Roderick looks like he just like doesn't care half the time, and like it's not till the end when he loses all his kids that he really feels like he's lost everything, and we find out why that is. And I found that kind of unique because when you get into the first story, which of course is about God, I can never remember how you say his name,
his
the
which
young
one?
kid, the Prospero.
Yeah. No, the first isn't the
Yeah.
first one about him. The first one is about him and his sister and their mom
Well,
and
yeah, yeah.
Karen.
The first one's about the kind of setup about them growing up with a mother who had a lot of issues that died some
Deeply
kind of
disturbed.
yeah,
And
deeply
comes
disturbed.
back. They
Yeah, comes
bury
back
her.
and kills their right. It comes back and they kill. It basically does the whole the burb situation where he comes back and murders the neighbor or something like that, and it leads them to basically having to take care of the family of them. And of course Roderick has his first kid, which is the Henry Thomas character. And yeah, it's basically like it's really just set up to how the story's going to play out, and how people are going to die, and it's just so crazy. It's so insane.
Yeah. You could spend hours talking about one episode.
Right. And I didn't really take a lot of notes on it because there's so much to deal with, and you could do an episode podcast for each episode, which I know people will do. But yeah, like the first episode is just kind of getting us into the modus operandi of what this or the MO of what this series is going to be. And the one thing that I don't know if you agree or not, but the one thing Mike Flanagan does really well is creating mood and tension, and also creating like really creepy atmosphere.
Oh
And
yeah.
you mentioned something about that runs through the series about eyes and how they're used.
And I think that is a thing with, and we talked about this after one of the episodes, but it is a thing that runs through Poe's work. But yeah,
Uh,
there's the indication of eyes across this series, whether it be there's other things too, but that's kind of one of the big ones. Like at one point, there's a set of sapphire eyes that are pulled out of an Egyptian statue,
yeah.
and there's yeah, they're kind of all over the place, so it's crazy.
Yeah, and that's the eyes are the most telling thing about an individual. Like if you ever watch somebody in makeup, if you know the actor and you look at their eyes, you can tell who it is. There's just
Yeah.
something about how the view of the world is just looked through the eyes of an individual, and that really plays well here. But it's like they also meet Carla Gugino's character during New Year's Eve or like holiday or whatever, and it's a really fascinating first episode. But once again, I was just like, I hope this picks up, because it was what I would call a really good episode, but it was just like there's not a huge amount. You see like a ghost in the background that is like, okay, who's that? Or you see like a dead person or something like that, you're like, okay, who's that? And I think it was the mother or whatever. Which what the series does really interestingly is each episode that he's talking, you see like the dead kid or dead individual of
Yeah.
that episode, and you kind of see how they die and stuff like that. And the first episode I think is the mother. I think the mother's who we see walking around and scaring him and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But
And it is really far out of sight, like it's blurry and it's in the background, and if you're paying attention to them, it's something that is kind of easy to miss unless he's speaking directly to them, which you think he's crazy at first because he's kind of going back and forth between talking to August and
yeah,
the whatever ghost is in the room.
right. Yeah, because as we'll see, like as the series moves along, it just becomes a kind of a staple thing. And then of course we hear things in the basement of this house. Of course the house is boarded up, the idea of just being kind of a shell of its like original self, and kind of being a dilapidated mess. It is the house of the usher, and of course
Yep.
there are things that are laid out through each episode that kind of pay off at the end of the series with the sounds in the basement. You're kind of wondering what that is, and it leads to, like, as the episodes play out, once again, if you look at the episode titles, they especially with what Netflix is known for doing, which is releasing all the episodes at once. Each episode is a title of a Edgar Allan Poe story. So the first episode, or the second episode, is The Mask of the Red Death, which is well known for its hedonism and its story of like this character named Prospero, who basically dies of, I think he dies, I can't remember if what you told me, but doesn't he like die a violent death or something like that in the book or the
He's
Logic
basically,
one?
well, he's basically killed by a demon, the demon that he's called down, or the devil or Satan or whatever. He calls down the devil to take out all these people, or in this case it's kind of because it takes place during a major plague. He draws all these nobles into his house, but they're like the highest of highest nobles. And he says that they're going to be safe against the plague that's ravaged the countryside. And in the
Right.
end, the disease comes amongst them, despite Prospero saying that they're good, and they all die horribly, basically. And the way
Right.
that they die in this is because this abandoned warehouse was a fact or a laboratory for the pharmaceutical company, and they want it to rain down at one point, and all of the water tankards on the roof actually hold all of these like really nasty like bits and acid and stuff, and it rains down on these people, and essentially, yeah, it kind of strips them bare, like it destroys them.
Yeah, because it basically what's happening is this kid is very much a hedonist. He basically convinces Frederick's wife, who is played by Crystal Balint, I think, who plays Morel Usher, to come to this party, and it basically is, he wants to basically have sex with her is what he wants to do, and it's this hedonistic party, and Carla Gugino pops up and says a few things to him, and then as you alluded to, the switch is thrown and what they think is water. I thought they got electrocuted at first, but I guess the acid thing makes a lot of sense. He, it's this was the point where I'm like, oh, this is this is quite something, because watching Mike Flanagan work and the way he's working and being very visceral, you see the full effect of what the acid does to these people and how disgusting it is and how violent it is. It's still like the most shocking thing I've seen in TV series for quite a while. It's pretty disgusting. And Carla Gugino's character Verna basically puts a little mask on him, to hide like his. I don't know what to say about it, but it's just like the way Prospero is like how he acts and how he gets his comeuppance is it's quite something. I gotta say.
Oh, absolutely. He's taken out like it's it's like toxic levels of just stuff, and their skin is
Yeah.
basically eaten away.
Right. And I mean that once again, it's a much more violent version of probably the story itself. I'm sure the story is pretty violent, but it's a what can we do in 2023 to be shocking, I guess is the easiest way to put it. And it's you're so wrapped up in the story of like the Roderick Usher family and the Mary McDonnell portion, and then when they go back in time and when they're dealing with like the company CEO at the time and dealing with all that nonsense, and then you're dealing with the Usher family and how messed up they are. You're dealing with like the news reports that you're seeing and how Arthur, the Mark Hamill character, is having to fix everything and the secrets that they're hiding. It's just like all this stuff is just playing out, but it's almost like drip feeding you in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, so you're not getting all the information. So once again, you'll see him talking about something that will play out later in the series, or you see, for instance, the experiment on the monkeys and stuff like that, and you'll see like the idea of like how this character that's played by Mike Flanagan's wife, Kate Siegel, how she is like able to twist and turn the ideas of like how fortune and fame can make you do pretty much anything and get away
Yeah.
with it in a lot of respects. And I like that idea, and I like how it's a story about people are being torn apart limb by limb, basically each kind of dimension to these individuals. And at first you're like, okay, how bad are these characters? And you really don't find out to the last episode how truly like despicable they decided where they got to. And it really does unwrap like an onion. First you see the outer layers, then you start seeing
Yeah.
the moldy in their interior layers. And the first episode just proves it. And once again, the Carla Gugino character, you're not entirely sure what her character is because she comes in the party in the red death mask or whatever, the thing you
Red
see on the
cape with
cover of
the
the poster.
skull. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something straight out of like Family Opera or something like that. And you're not entirely sure what she is or what her purpose is. You just know that she's there the minute Prospero dies, and she just they start wondering who she is, in the next episode. But it's insane. Like, we'll talk about the next episode in a second, but it's just like there's so much like world building. It's blowing my mind just thinking about how much stuff is just going into just the first few episodes that end up paying off, which is something you don't see a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about the way each one of them dies, it, in a quite a large way, they bring it upon themselves. The reason that
absolutely,
the reason that it's their own, that they're hoisted on their own petard, really.
Power corrupts, absolutely.
Well, it's not even about power, absolutely. It's just like, oh, well, I clearly know better than everybody else. I want it to rain down on everybody, hook up into those tanks and let's get this party started without looking at what's up in there. And it was his decision to do that caused all of it. And I did also want to add, you talk about the deaths being gory and gruesome. I will agree, but I don't think I guess I watch a lot of horror, so it's not, I'm not going to say I wasn't affected, but it was, you watch it and it's kind of the logical end for what they do. So it hits you, but it doesn't hit you.
Right. I guess my point of that, what I was trying to say there was, going into the series, I knew it was going to be about people who dies. It's just the nature of the story. But the thing I wasn't expecting is how violent it was going to be. Like House of the Honey of Hill House, Midnight Mass, they're violent series. Like the spoiler alert, the hanging of the woman in the Honey of Hill House, the murder of the murders in Midnight Mass. I can't remember who gets killed, but one of the main characters, like the woman, gets killed, and then Zach Gilford, who plays the younger version of Roderick in this series, he gets turned into a vampire. Once again, spoiler. But it's this series just goes. It like goes for it, and it's effective. Like, there are times where I was like, holy shit, I was like, but yeah, I mean, sorry, I changed out my headphones.
No.
No, I was letting the audience know. But yeah,
I'm gonna blame Edgar Allan Poe for you changing out your headphones.
Exactly. But no, but like, you sit there and just watch it, and you're just like, wow, it's like, even me, it was like, there's some moments I was like, holy shit. But I mean, as you can see, that was the purpose. It's meant to shock you and meant to like make you go, oh my god, they're going to do things that may make you uncomfortable on a visceral level. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, agreed 100%.
Once again, the first death is just kind of a blow to the Usher family. Once again, unless you've seen the whole entire series, there is more going on in the background that you don't have pieces to. That's why it's so genius as it moves along. But the next episode deals with Kate Siegel's character of Camille, who basically is the sharp-tongued public relations of Fortunato Pharmaceuticals, which is the Usher family. And
she's a spin master.
Yeah, and once again, it's a very crazy episode where she's sleeping with her aides, and she is, like, you see like Roderick Usher seeing her, and like, how she is murdered and stuff like that. It's just, there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens in the episode. Once again, with she comes across, of course, at the clinic where the woman is experimenting on the monkeys. She comes across, of course, Carla Gugino's character, who is now a security guard, and it's just, I don't know, it's a lot of crazy stuff. It's so crazy how she becomes paranoid,
and some of the background on the monkey thing, real quick. They're experimenting on monkeys to try and create like a thing that will keep the heart like beating even if the brain goes, which is really quite a larger overarching thing where it's talking about eternal life or extending life beyond, and you've got Roderick on one side that's trying to extend life, one because he's dealing with issues where his heart is not in great shape, and Madeline is dealing with like trying to perfect AI that can upload your personality and keep you on the net, forever.
Which is ironic because I guess not really ironic, but it's interesting because that's what we're dealing with today. We're dealing with how do we keep ourselves living for longer. There's an episode of Black Mirror which deals with like AI technology and uploading ourselves into the cloud, our brain, and stuff like that. And this is two sides of that. Are we dealing with like the AI technology, which is where they want to that's where she wants to go because she feels like that's the bigger route that they can make more money, and he wants to stick to the pharmaceuticals and the drugs and that's why his wife
and
is
the technology too, the kind of the heart pump and that kind of stuff. But you do also see kind of this Egyptian motif over the top of all of it, which obviously there's a lot of calls back to Egypt and mummies and that kind of a thing with Poe. But it does both of their offices are all decorated up, and it does continue on throughout the series. So, but anyway, so they've done stuff with monkeys. The monkey dies, but they screw with the results to say, "Hey, we got monkeys surviving! Yay!"
Right. Then they want to do like human experiments and stuff like that, and it's pretty crazy because each character in this series is trying to do everything they can to live forever. For instance, like Prospero wants to live forever as a hedonist, and Camille wants to live forever as like this public relations person. And then you have Tiana Miller, the young woman who's dealing with the monkey experiments. And it's just a really interesting thing to see because it's very much a prescient thing to what's going on today, and it could be a thing about how Hollywood looks at like AI versus traditional values when it comes to like filmmaking and stuff like that too. So, but as we know, things don't go well for Camille, and she has a really interesting death because she walks into she wants to ruin her sister, her illegitimate, her stepsister or whatever experiments, but she goes in there and she meets Carla Gugino, and she's like taking pictures so she can do a spin on it. There starts to be noises that Carla Gugino and like her area makes, and I really love the idea of like Camille just says screw it, and she takes a picture. And once the flash ends, it goes from Carla Gugino to the monkey. And I thought that was a really cool shot. Do you remember that shot? Because it's just like, and then the monkey attacks her, and there's like, I don't know if there's like poop or blood or whatever's going on.
It's kind of all bodily fluids, I think.
Yeah, it's so disgusting, but it really is like a fascinating thing to watch because like I love how Carla Gugino's character, like how she manipulates everything, how she manipulates the world, how she manipulates the individuals. Once again, she is this person that is acting like a monkey a little bit, and Camille takes the picture and turns into a monkey, and that's when the monkey murders her. I thought that was a really fascinating thing because you see that a lot with what she's doing. Like what is her character? I don't even know how to explain Carla Gugino's character until we get to the very end, but it's like it's a really fascinating thing to see. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and the Poe connection here is the thing. It's the episode is called Murder of the Rue Morgue, and basically there's a monkey that's going around killing people, and it's actually Auguste Duplain, who's the person that Roderick is talking throughout this entire episode. He's trying to track down this murderer, and at one point, Camille, the person in this episode who dies, was in the short story shoved up a chimney, and it was one of those things where it was she was shoved up there too hard for it to have been done by a human. But ultimately, it's a chimpanzee that does the killing of. Or an escaped chimpanzee that does the killing of Camille and all of several other people. So,
yeah, like you start to see like the people who die in these episodes, like the way the story plays out, it actually fits their personality. So, this woman Camille trying to get the upper hand, is killed in trying to put her sister down. Prospero dying by his biggest fantasies of having sex with his sister-in-law or whatever, and whatever is going on, snorting cocaine and all that stuff. I think each episode deals with kind of a personality trait of these characters and how they portrayed, and you see it through each episode, and it's really fascinating. It really is. For instance, when we get to Rahul Kohli's character Napoleon in the next episode, he's basically killed the black cat, which has always been annoying to him. And it's also like, what I find fascinating is his story, which is the black cat, which is if you look at like Cat's Eye and stuff like that, it's kind of that devil, how we view like animals and stuff like that. But what I found really interesting is he is an individual that tries to hide who he is, and instead of like living up to who he is and living up to who he should be, he does the meet the parents thing, where he basically finds another cat, which ends up being the cat from hell, and ends up kind of being Carla Gugino's character. But I kind of like the metaphor behind that, where the black cat is kind of like him in a lot of respects, or kind of like his worrisome of who he is, because the cat is a very evil individual and he's just hiding who he is. For instance, when he's playing video games and he's having an oral sex act done on him by a woman, but he's a gay individual, and it's just like he's not willing to accept that maybe he is kind of putting up a facade, and so he tries to hide that by trying to get another cat, and of course he falls out the window and dies to his death. And I'm kind of curious about like what you think about that. We're starting to see Roderick kind of fall apart because his kids are dying. There's, like I said, there's an underlying theme behind that. And what do you think?
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. I think so the black cat, just for reference, is a tale of a guy that sees this cat all over the place, and it's basically him going crazy, slowly but surely. And the secondary black cat is, the question is, did he ever see it, or did he ever actually buy it? And what was the, is it actually alive there, or is he just going nuts? He's also quite a drug peddler of many, many exotic type drugs. So, so there's that. But no, I think the way he went out was appropriate.
Yeah.
When he smashed into the pavement, that was very poetic.
Well, yeah, he's like destroying the world around him too.
He misses. He's got I think it was a Lambo or some kind of supercar out front, and you think that for sure that he's going to hit the car, but he doesn't. So that's nice.
Right. Yeah, he just hits the pavement, and then the black cat walks on. Doesn't he black cat walk on him or something like that?
I believe so. Himself. Yeah. And again, that's Carla. And again, that's Carla's character in that too.
Yeah. And I just find it funny, just the simple fact that like how he's just not willing to accept who he is, and it kind of comes back and bites him in the ass. And once again, he's lying. He's lying to people basically.
Oh yeah, but he does what a drug dealer does. But even when it comes down to like the grieving aspect, like he just kind of shuts everything up and doesn't allow himself to grieve over the terrible, like, gruesome murders of two of his siblings.
Well, yeah, that becomes a thing where it just feels like they just don't care when each member's dying. Like it's insane to think about, but it's also
they're so self-involved. They're so into their own bits and trying to do their own thing that they really don't have the connections.
Right, and I kind of love that this is where we start getting Frederick kind of learning that his wife was at the hedonistic party. And there's not a lot that plays out with his character until like I think this is 7th or 8th episode, maybe the 6th episode, where we start to see kind of the nature of who Frederick is. But I like how he's like, no, we're just going to take her home and I'm going to deal with her there.
For background here, his wife was the only one to survive the acid rain that comes down on everybody. She's basically bandaged foot to head. And she's at the hospital, and Frederick says, well, I run a multi-billion-dollar industry. I can take care of her at home. Oh, there's one other character that we haven't mentioned, Lenore.
Well, I was going to get to that, but I like how Carla Gugino's character basically tells her to like run, like get out of the building, because she knows what's going to happen, and she's not there for this character But yeah, Lenore is the daughter of Frederick and I think
Morley?
Camille
No, it's
Morel
Morley.
Morley. She's the most pure of the Usher family, the one that you kind of feel bad for her because her father is a cokehead and her mother is bandaged up, and Roderick is like, very much feels like, like she's the one that represents his like ex-wife and stuff like that, and the kindness of the heart of his ex-wife. And I don't know, it's an interesting character. It's played by the young girl that was in Doctor Sleep, but
Yep.
yeah. And once again, she is the one that kind of is a little bit of our surrogate for this story of like, we kind of follow through her eyes of like how demented this family is.
Oh, damn, I was following through Frederick's eyes.
Oh, I'm sure you were snorting up that cocaine and drugs and
Oh,
stuff like
yeah.
that. It's
Ah,
wild how Henry Thomas is like insane in this series. He went
yes.
from kid
He gets.
actor to yeah. So we now have three illegitimate kids that are dead. There's one more still alive, and that's the next episode, which is the Telltale Heart.
And they
Which
do make quite a large point about the illegitimate kids versus the legitimate ones.
yeah, and they kind of all die in like like in the order
It's
of like when
reverse
they were
age
born.
order. Yeah, it's reverse age order.
Yeah, so they go from oldest or youngest to oldest or whatever.
Yeah.
But basically, Tania Miller, Tania Miller plays Victorine La Forcada, and she's the one doing the experiments with the monkeys. And the biggest thing about the Telltale Heart is hearing the heart wherever it's at.
Yep.
You can always hear it, and it starts to drive her insane a little bit. And I really like this episode is one I remember the most because it's so demented what happens. But Victorine basically doing all this stuff to kind of this kind of this heart that is mechanical, and she's hearing it every time she's talking to someone. She's like, where's that noise coming from? And people are like, I can't hear anything. But you can start to see her sanity start to fall apart as this starts to happen, and it leads to
Well, real quick. So there's
yeah,
she's in, so they have a, even though technically speaking they kind of faked all the trials with apes or with monkeys to say, oh well, they were successful, even though very few of them were successful. She's like, oh, we need to get started on human trials. That's gonna solve it. And she kind of puts aside, her ambition gets the best of her, and they kind of put aside all of the actual like things that you should go through. The moral decision making processes and stuff. And
she's a Willem Dafoe,
100%.
Norman Osborn.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And her girlfriend or wife is the one that does the surgeries, but she refuses to take part in them, basically.
Yeah. And it kind of comes to a head like in the when she basically says that to Victorine's character, and it leads to Victorine throwing something at her, but we don't see what happens. But basically what it boils down to, she's starting to lose her sanity, and she's starting to hear this pulsating beat of a heart. And when Roderick comes over to talk to her and have dinner with her, he hears something in the room. He hears, and he goes over and he opens up the door and he sees the Victorine's girlfriend basically chest torn open, and the heart, was it the heart, like the fake heart or whatever, not the fake heart, but
it looks like a strap that goes around the heart and keeps it beating.
Yeah, it's like a artificial heart, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
is like pulsating, and you realize that Victorine has just kind of lost her sanity. And I can't remember where Carla Gugino's character pops up, but it basically leads to just like the nature of this whole idealism of like what they're doing is so flawed and so problematic. And you start to see the seams truly starting to fall apart and break apart. This is like the first episode where you really truly see how dark and disturbing and how corrupt this pharmaceutical company is and what they're doing, and like kind of the nature of everything. The first three characters, I guess you could say the same thing about Camille, but Victorine's character and how she loses her mind and she stabs herself and kills herself, and Roderick being there is the first true sign of just how disturbing and like messed up, and just how brutal of what this family has done. And we'll see later on in the last episode why that is, but it's such a very effective. It's when I truly kind of just went, this is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen, because it's just such an effective emotional like thing where, it also feels like Victorine was somebody that was actually truly trying to change the world, but
That's where
got a
it
little too,
started.
yes, but got a little too full of herself. And, she made the mistake of killing the girlfriend. She made the mistake of, starting to lose her sanity. And isn't that kind of what I guess that's kind of what the Telltale Heart is about individuals losing the piece of them that makes them whole. And kind of, I guess, I don't know, but it's a very interesting kind of episode that really kind of took me aback, I guess.
Oh no, 100%. Like that is probably one of the most horrific things you're going to see is when they open the door and there's this probably brain dead person, but the heart is still pumping.
Yeah, right. And that's kind of what, once again, that's what the Telltale Heart's about. It's about somebody who's killed somebody, and their guilt and their kind of unease starts to kind of, it's how we feel when we feel guilty about something, and we start to it starts to kind of twist our personality and twist our perception of reality. And that's what's kind of great about it. And this is when Roderick sees like the nature of what she does and how messed up it is. And you
Yeah.
start to see it with like, when she comes into the house, that when Roderick's talking to his, once friend or whatever, and he starts to tell him like, this is the point where you're going to really understand why you're going to put me in jail and stuff like that. And I don't know, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty
Yeah.
good stuff. So, and that's the end of the series. That's it. We're done.
Smart
Yeah, no,
ass.
okay. um no, it leads to the gold bug, which is something I didn't know much about, but it kind of shows off like the whole idea of like what the Usher family is, which is all vanity, which is all making money, which is all, being the rulers of the world. You see it with, the mother, with not the mother, but the Mary McDonnell character, Madeline, and stuff like that. You start seeing kind of the falling apart of the individuals and the youth, and like the lying to save their soul, on not really save their soul, but the lying to keep themselves in the company of the CEO, who's starting to show his kind of true colors. And it basically is about a product line called Goldbug that the first actually legitimate kid of Roderick Usher, who is played by, who is she played by? Samantha Sloyan. She is trying to put out a product line, but her vanity, her paranoia, the death of her family is starting to get to her. And I kind of really love it because it's like the first time where Carla Gugino's character, we're starting to see that there's something more to her when it comes to like the nature of who she is. We're kind of wondering. We're finally seeing the bricked up wall. Of course, the character of Roderick is kind of talking to the wall. We're hearing the jingle bells and stuff like that, or the bells. And I like the idea of like the paranoia, the vanity, all the things that this woman in her kind of nature, who she is, and how kind of disturbed and depraved she can be, how she feels that like these chemicals and like perfumes and all this stuff will change everybody's life, and she feels like a Kardashian in a lot of respects, or as you
Well,
said,
she's actually
Gwyneth Paltrow.
yeah, she's channeling Goop basically. And they really, the idea is with this brand that they're trying to get away from the pharmaceutical, the kind of like drug popping or pill popping
Yeah,
kind of thing, and go
they're
something
looking
more
at fountain of
natural.
youth type of thing.
Right.
Yeah,
They're
it's like a
trying to
fountain of
change,
youth.
yeah, they're trying to change the image of Fortuna and to this, or Fortunato, to this other brand. Like that's what they see as the way forward, and she's seen as kind of this golden child that's going to save them basically.
Yeah, and of course it does go well because she starts seeing Carlo Gugino's character, and she starts seeing him all over the place. And of course, Madeline sees her all over the place and tries to strangle her, and she disappears in like soot or whatever. She gets snapped out of existence or something like that. And I like the idea of like the wife of Roderick, the current wife of Roderick, basically is an individual who's like, I need to get off this medicine. And Roderick's like, well, if you do that, it's going to take you 3 years because you're an addict now. And
And it's
all the things
very,
that can
very,
happen
very
to her.
addictive. The drug
Yeah,
that
it's just
built their company is incredibly like super addictive, although it's marketed as like a painkiller. And it just
imagine that. Imagine that company lying to the public about
oh
how
what?
addictive
Huh?
their
That's
opioid drug
crazy.
is. That never happened in America.
Well,
Yeah, it's just it's all about how people use the kind of nature, they use the human psychology to sell crap, to sell fake, to sell, like trying to get rid of COVID or something like that, the selling like bleach or whatever. They're just like it really represents just like lying to the public and the public believing them, and that's what
or
becomes the
charging
major.
charging an absolute like fortune for these things that are dubious at best.
Yeah, or charging a insane amount of money for drugs that people actually need,
And
like
they
what
don't
that
really
one
get
guy
into
did.
this one though with that. Like it's more, at least with Goldbug, it's more about the paying stupid prices and doing these things
Yeah,
that don't, like if you look at Gwyneth Paltrow's whole thing, like it's all jade eggs that you stick up your vagina and shit like that, and
right,
it's all it may work, but the chances of it actually helping you are so slim that it's not going to do anything.
right. It's like in Sweeney Todd, Demon Barber of Fleet Street, when Sweeney Todd and Mrs. Lovett they walk up and they see Mr. Is it Pirelli's Miracle Elixir, and they're just
Yeah,
watching, and they're just like these people are so inspired by it and so excited by it, but they're selling them basically
it's
an
alcohol.
invention. Well, they're not even selling them alcohol. They're
It's a
selling wonder
combination of
drugs. They're
yeah, it's
selling
a
them a fake
combination
wonder
of
drugs.
cat piss, alcohol with like a little bit of peppermint or something.
Yeah, it's like Wizard of Oz when Dorothy goes in there and she talks to the guy who's looking through her basket or something like that. It's
Yeah.
selling him a fake bill of goods or whatever.
Oh, 100%.
But in essence, she goes back to her house. Her husband has left her because we were talking about this. What's really great is about the simple fact that she is basically loses track of time. Like she'll be like stuff is happening to her where she'll be. I guess she's like high on drugs or whatever, but she'll be doing something,
No, she's
and then
just
it'll be
that
like,
tired. She's trying to do all this stuff to make this
oh
brand
yeah, when
work,
she's
and
like
she's
arguing
just
with
that
her
tired.
husband, like her husband's arguing with her, and then she says something, and she looks up, and her husband's put the keys, and he's gone, and all that stuff, and she's starting to see, like I said, the Carla Gugino character, and it leads to like one of the cooler death sequences where she's basically attacking, she's attacking all the mirrors because she sees Carla Gugino's character, and it leads Carla Gugino's character saying like, you don't have to do this to yourself. You don't have to, like, what are you doing? You're gonna kill yourself. And it leads into like her breaking mirrors, and like she gets cut in the face, she gets glass in her foot,
Oof. Ow.
and
Ow, ow,
yeah,
ow.
which is yeah, and then then they do the Matrix thing or whatever, where she sees Carla Gugino up in like the sex mirror at the top of the ceiling, and she throws the pole up in like some weird crazy like Matrix style slow motion where the glass is falling on her, and like she falls backwards, like some of the glasses hit the bed. She stabs herself through the back with the piece of glass, and then the piece of glass like cuts into her in the jugular. And we see that earlier with how she looks in the House of the Usher itself, and it's a pretty brutal. I was like, holy cow, that's kind of brutal. That's kind of messed
Yeah.
up, to be fairly honest.
I would 100% agree. And it goes to show that she's kind of her own worst enemy, honestly. Did you want
And
me
yeah,
to look up real quick like what Goldbug was about?
no, Goldbug is about
No, I mean
the
the story from Poe.
well, no, it has to do with like somebody gets obsessed with a gold bug, a bug that's gold,
Oh yeah,
and
that's
starts to
right.
like story is often compared to Poe's.
If you're not, I'm not worried about it. If
Legrand
you're
is
not
going
worried,
insane. It goes to Legrand's friend, an unnamed narrator who agrees to visit his little friend. Yeah, it's basically he gets obsessed with like bugs that are gold, and like it basically is what this story is. It's very
right.
similar to but with a modern spin. But yeah, that's basically Goldbug, which leads into the Pit and the Pendulum, which is everything's starting to come to a head. We're starting to learn a lot about who Carla Gugino's character could be. We're learning a lot about the 70s when it came to like the 70s, 80s, when it came to like how Roderick betrayed his wife and his now ex-wife and his friend, his lawyer friend, and we're starting to see kind of everything fall apart. And of course, we get Henry Thomas's character, who plays the eldest son, Frederick, who is quite demented. To be fairly honest, he's quite the lorn-torn lover, the individual who, in essence, basically is torturing his wife for what he believes that she did like a really disgusting thing. And he has pictures all over the place. He hasn't changed out her bandages. He basically
Oh,
pulls out her
it's
teeth.
gnarly. Oh, it's gnarly
Yeah,
as hell.
he's like, he injects her with like whatever drug that they've given her. It's
The
probably the same drug as the pharmaceutical company has.
well, it what it is it's like this it's a paralyzer kind of a drug that was used initially on these monkeys to put them under. So it was supposed to be something
Yeah,
that would replace anesthesia, but it keeps you 100% aware of what's going on around you, but it paralyzes you.
right. And we watch this guy just basically torture his wife for, he's like, I'm gonna find the ring and you're never gonna take it off again. If you do, I'm gonna meld it to your ring finger. And of course, Lenore is found this perfect place for her to get skin grafts and to be taken care of. And in essence, he refuses to do that. He locks the door and he goes off to basically destroy the building that Percipero or whatever his name is basically
Prospero.
died in. Prospero. And
He's hyped up on coke like nobody's damn business, and like in Pit and the Pendulum, this guy accuses his wife of doing the horizontal mambo with another guy who he thinks that his wife did that with his brother at this big party thing, and it gets weird quick. But
yeah, and once again, like we're learning more and more about Roderick, and how like the idea of like he's losing all his kids, and of course it just becomes more and more of chaotic. We're kind of learning about how Madeline wants to take over the company, and she's going to find a way to basically kill Roderick so that she can take over the company, and so on and so forth. So what ends up happening basically is Frederick is in essence, he's at the site. He's like, I need to go in, give me 5 minutes. He goes into the room. That's when we see Carla Gugino's character in like a work uniform or whatever, and we find out that he's basically taken the wrong drug. He's taken the paralyzer drug, and he falls to the ground, and then Carla Gugino's like talking to him about,
basically, she says that he, in another life, had he not chosen the route that he chose, he would have been a really great dentist. And
yeah,
the fact that he ripped out his wife's teeth, or that's why he ripped out his wife's teeth. The fact of how he's treated Morley throughout this entire process, the torture and everything, he deserves to die slowly and in a really, really, really terrible way. And so then the building goes up, it gets demolition or it gets exploded from the inside, and some debris gets caught on this piece. And like the Pit and the Pendulum, where it's basically a gigantic axe that slowly goes back and forth and back and forth. It slowly, a quarter inch at a time, cuts him in half.
yeah. You see like Roderick, and he sees his wife and he sees his kid, and there's a segment where the kid just gets kind of falls apart in half, and you're like, oh, that's probably how Frederick's gonna die and stuff like that. And it's she, of course, Lenore opens up the door, sees what's happened to her mother, and the police are called, and it's a very sad, very state of affair of like how the mother is treated, and how Frederick has all these pictures up of like it's of really disturbing nature.
Well, it's
How
all pictures of the two of them at their wedding, but it's just like
yeah,
obsessive to the point of distraction.
right. And for instance, like Roderick's down in the basement staring at the brick wall, and of course Madeline, Madeline comes down, basically convinces him to kill himself, and he takes all those pills and he falls over. But of course, you know, uh, Carla Gugino's character says, nope, that's not going to happen. He throws up everything. And it's he's lost all his kids except for his granddaughter Lenore. And yeah, it's once again they're throwing in stuff for the Pit and the Pendulum. They're throwing stuff for the other episodes to kind of lead us to the conclusion of this series. So
it's a crazy ass ending, I'll tell you that much.
yeah, it is. But before we get to the ending, like, what is your feeling of like how these stories are playing out up to the ending, where we kind of get the revelation and stuff like that?
Oh, it's amazing. And one character we haven't talked about is Mark Hamill.
Well, I was gonna get to him at the end, just
Okay,
kind of talk
cool.
about yeah.
No, it is. I mean, at first, like Carla Gugino's character is very, like, she's very much like, okay, I'm here to do a job, let's do this. But as she goes along, and you mentioned this, how she kind of softens a bit, and she sees all these kids and kind of where they came from and the reason they are the way that they are, and the emotion that she shows as she's trying to help them, and the she responds to each kid in an appropriate manner. Like Tamberlin, she's
Yeah.
very much like, you don't have to die. Please, all you have to do is just stop. And to Frederick, she's like, you bastard, rot in hell, essentially. And she does such a great job. And the way that the stories connect and the way that it's played out, and it's masterful on so many levels. And I adore it.
Right.
And I'm ready to know what happens in the last damn episode.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Yay.
I mean, yeah, I agree. It's to watch how these kids kind of are kind of killed off, and kind of the nature of who they are. Like, not each episode is not like it's unique in its own right. So not every murder or death or violent ending is satisfying. Sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's justified, but in the end it leads to the conclusion of the series and what exactly is happening, and it makes it all the more kind of sad. It really does. It kind of makes it kind of legit depressing, because basically what ends up happening and what we learn is Roderick and Madeline, as younger kids, after he's kind of ruined his relationship, after they have lied to the government, to the lawyers, and they've done all these bad things, they've decided that they're going to hostile take over the company that they currently work for.
Oh, it's the worst kind of hostile takeover.
Well, that's what I'm getting to. Like, they're going to basically take over the company, and what they're going to do is they're going to get rid of the CEO, the douchebag guy. And what they end up doing, which is crazy, is they pull out a 1921 scotch or whatever, and sherry, and they give him a drink, and they don't drink it, so there's something in it, and they take him down to the basement where, of course, that brick wall was. So we know now why that brick wall is there. And what ends up happening is he is poisoned with cyanide, and he is locked up
he's basically bricked in the wall, which is like a very, 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 I think it's actually in the House of Usher. There's someone, or no, Tomb of Ligeia, where someone is actually bricked up inside a wall.
Well, that's what I was going to get to, because but no, you're fine. But like he's like, I'll do anything. I'll give you money. I'll do whatever you want to be CEO, fine, be CEO. If you want to be COO, fine, I'll be CEO. And it basically boils down to these greedy a-holes, these douchebag a-holes are basically taking over the company by force, and they're going to get rid of the opposition or the competition or whoever, and they basically brick them up to be dead in a wall. And we were trying to figure out, is it Carla Gugino's character, is it Annabelle Lee, the Roderick Russian's ex-wife, like, who is in the wall? And find out it's the CEO of the company, and they put back on the mask and stuff like that, and they're like, oh, we're gonna hire a track, and it leads them to the bar. And what ends up happening is Carla Gugino knows what's going on, because she's a supernatural being. We find out, as the Raven. She's basically the epitome of death, is what we've kind of come to the conclusion of. And
death and ill omens, and also
she's basically, she is like, if you want to think about a pact with the devil or whatever, they basically are willing to trade their whole family bloodline for wealth, for a future, for success. And it basically is what the story is about. Sold their family bloodline so that they could be rich for 50 years. It's like Looper or whatever, where once they get they get that big stack of gold. They're sent off on their own, and then they're killed off after 30 years. It's like they basically, as I said, they sold their soul to the devil for a box of magic beans or whatever. It's pretty crazy because they're very ambitious, but it just shows you how dark and deep and how willing they're to sacrifice the people that they love for their greed. And it just it's a pretty crazy thing, because that's kind of like what humanity is. Human thing is, we want money, sometimes we'll do whatever it takes. And they talk about things that happen in certain administrations that I'm not going to get into because that's not this type of podcast. And it leads to why the kids were killed, because it was that time where she's come to they come to pay the piper, she's come to collect the souls or whatever. And
one real quick random thing, the bricked up wall, I apologize, I thought it was in Tomb of Ligeia, but it's actually the cast of Amontillado. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
Not that it matters, but I just wanted to be accurate with it. So
I mean, it better be accurate now than they tell us in the comments. So
well, that's where it says it happened. I have not seen I've not read the Cask of Amontillado or Tillado. So,
but on top of that, Roderick is, when he's an older individual, he is having 3 funerals at once, which feels like the cheapest kind of form of funeral, because not only does nobody show up, but it's like, hey, let's get 3 for the price of 1. And he sees his wife, who's a very young, like the young woman, and of course she has like in the back of her head. So I don't know if she got shot or she was
she was alive, wasn't she?
No. Did you see when she turned around?
No,
she had a gaping hole in the back of her head.
Oh shit! Okay, yeah. Apologies.
So I think what ended up happening, this may be something that just wasn't explained. I think she took her own life. She either killed herself, or Roderick killed her, or something happened. Like she found out he had illegitimate kids, or something like that. But something happened to her, because she goes up to the casket. You can clearly see the hole.
Oh, okay.
In the back of her head.
In the foreground on that, but
no, you're fine. I'm just saying, like,
yeah. She does say that because there came an age where Roderick wanted to be, sole guardian. So he started tempting the kids with money. And then she said that every time they came back to her, they were no longer her kids. So I'm sure the heartbreak of that was probably pretty hard.
Yeah. So, right. That leads me to think of suicide or something like that. And, once we get to this point, we're getting close to the end of the series. You're starting to see the grief of an individual that we all have, this grief where we wish we had done stuff better. We had done something different, because now he has nothing. Like, he sold his soul for all this wealth, and none of it's going to be handed to any of his kids. Nothing is going to be handed to anybody. He basically realizes that he's going to die. He almost dies of a heart attack because he sees his boss in the car in like the jester uniform, and it all boils down to the idea of getting rid of the Usher bloodline, where in technicality he basically brings Madeline down and does exactly what they did to his old boss, where they poison her, and she basically, as this family does, because they want wealth, they want the afterlife, and they're trying to do whatever. He turns his sister into a mummy, or to a mummy, basically
mummy. Yeah. He takes out her eyes and he puts these really, really expensive and very, very, I think they date to one of the Egyptian dynasties, but replaces her eyes with these sapphires.
Yeah, exactly. And then he is basically strangled to death because she comes back to life, which is kind of a callback to the first episode. But there's also other things that happen where he once the last kid, the Lenore character, dies, where it's really sad because she's an innocent, but once again, Carla Gugino said all your bloodline is going to cease to exist at a certain point in your life, right when you guys die, because everything's going to be one big funeral or whatever. And basically what ends up happening is Carla Gugino goes and talks to Lenore and says like one of the most sweetest kind of dialogue or monologues or whatever about her mother's going to be, she's going to heal, she's going to create a foundation for Lenore, she's going to save millions of people, and it's a sacrifice that's very, very sad and melancholy, but there's a ray of light at the end of the tunnel, where like you look at like Midnight Mass or something like that, where the 2 kids escape and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I found that really potent. I felt that it kind of twinges at your heartstrings, but it's also a very potent, very sad thing, because basically Roderick Usher, in his quest to make lots and lots of money and become this powerful entity, just sacrificed anything and everybody in his path. And it just, you see it up in the boardroom when like she's talking to him, and you see everybody falling from the sky, all these dead bodies falling from, it's like a really effective scene. You probably agree, where people are just falling and falling and falling and falling. And you realize Roderick's pretty much in his own personal hell right now, where everything he knows and loves is gone, and he's now kind of, being the maker and getting to the, I guess, the everything. It's basically blowing up in his face, and he's starting to, roost with the hens or whatever, I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. And all of the people that all this body count came from the fact that he created this, or he marketed this drug that is used for pain, but it's super, 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 super addictive and intensely difficult to get off.
Yeah, it's ironic that the only person that lives are the two people that are the most, are kind of the most innocent outside of Lenore. Lenore unfortunately had the simple fact that she was part of the bloodline, but the woman, the mother, the wife of Frederick, and June are the only ones that really, outside of the Carl Lumbly character, who's basically just there as kind of writing the book or whatever that you would see at the end of a series or a movie or whatever. But it basically, these two characters end up being the ones that live because they're the ones that are they're not terrible individuals. They made mistakes, and one had to pay for it. Both of them had to pay for it, but they're going to find a way to do good. And that's what the idea of, is getting rid of the evil in the world and actually doing good. And I think that's, maybe that's not what Edgar Allan Poe was trying to say, but I think that's what Mike Flanagan is trying to say, is you get rid of the true evil and you try to build the light upon that evil, and you try to do good, and it brings out a better look to the societal norms in the world, because we're so wrapped up in just the disturbing nature of like what we see on Twitter, what we see in the world of the news, and what we see in everything, that there is that shadow of light that we can see in the conclusion of it, that I think is really potent and powerful.
Absolutely.
And of course, as you mentioned earlier, like 3 hours ago as we started this, the house collapses, and we see, of course, the Raven, and it's very much the fall of everything, the fall of this family, the fall of the company, the fall of the really dark nature stuff. And we see the Raven, we see Carla Gugino's character, which, once again, as you've said, is kind of like a fate, is kind of like a tempter, is kind of somebody who pushes along the narrative. And of course, Carla Lumbly talks, and talks about all that stuff. And of course, we see the grave sites, and we see all the pieces being put, that we've seen throughout the entire series, being placed on there. And then the series kind of ends with like that's it for the Usher family. They're officially gone, and all the evil that they created is still going to have an effect, but there's these two individuals that are going to make a better state in the world. And I think that's the ultimate end to what the series was trying to do, is be an homage to Poe's material, but also give that nature of just how absolutely corrupts, and it can cause mass destruction in its wake. And I don't know, that's how I feel. What do you feel?
No, I agree. I think that, well, it's, you kind of make your, you made your bed, you're gonna lay in it. And like they kind of talk about how throughout the process, like on multiple levels, the Usher family was about avoiding pain. Roderick and Madeline, made the deal so they could save their family pain, because that's kind of how it was pitched to them, is, well, would you rather have 50 years of no pain or 75 years of, struggle and heartache and all this kind of thing? And then you've got the drug side of things, where
right,
like, it's supposed to be a painkiller, and they say at the end, pain is something that is a must, but out of pain can come good things.
And you see that with Mark Hamill's character of Arthur, who's an individual that spent so much time creating so much chaos, so much problems, so much, hiding under the rug, being the fixer, the cleaner, or whatever. And the reason I left him to last is because he's just how good he is in the series. It's like an Emmy-worthy performance, where he is just like, he's the guy in the background. He's the guy that, people know who he is, but are kind of afraid of him. But underneath, he is an individual that is willing to accept his fate. He doesn't want to have anything handed to him. He's done everything on his own. He's dealt with a lot of stuff in his life, whether it be, when he traveled to the Antarctic and stuff like that. But it's like Carlo Gugino's like, I appreciate that because unlike these other people, he's willing to just accept his fate. These other people were never willing to accept his fate. Henry Thomas's character, or Frederick, wasn't willing to accept his fate. Tamerlane was not willing to accept her fate. Victorine was not really willing to accept her fate. They were willing to do everything in their power to survive. And Arthur's just like, I'm just going to accept what happens. I don't want to. I've been doing this for too long. It's just I've seen too much stuff. If they have a mountain of evidence, I'm going to go to jail. It's a really interesting character arc that I really kind of love, and it's a very good, in the background character that has a kind of a meaningful payoff at the end. But I mean, I don't know how you feel about it.
No, I agree. I think that his character is probably, he kind of goes through the same thing that Roderick did, obviously at a different end of life, but he's like, you know what? I've done all this stuff. And he's absolutely extolled throughout the entire series as to all of the things that he's done and the places he's been. And, Carla asks him, hey, you know what? You can live out the rest of your life and be, not have to worry about jail and not have to worry about all this stuff and continue to have a good life. And he's like, I've lived long enough. I'm freaking 70. Leave me the hell alone.
He's like, I played the Joker. I played Luke Skywalker.
I lost my freaking hand, man. But just
yeah.
Up until he sits down with her, he's got, he has kind of that Joker voice. It's very stern and very, very no nonsense. And then even the way like he holds his face super tight, and then he gets to the point where he sits down with her, and it's like everything relaxes, and he is just he's just a guy.
I like how he drugs her, wraps her up in a bag, and she's like like clapping in her hands. She's like, man, that's some good stuff. We thought it was like Madeline in there, but no, she was down the basement dying. But yeah, I think he just realizes that it's over, that there's not much more else he can do, and he just accepts that he's going to pay the price for his dirty deeds done dirt cheap, that type of thing. So, but I mean, that's kind of the long way around, short way around. I mean, once again, we could talk hours upon hours on end for each episode. But that's kind of the spoiler discussion for Fall of the House of the Usher. Once again, it's a series with a lot of dense material. It's a series with a lot of stuff going on. It uses this series to full potential. It has a great cast, has a great score. It's truly inspired series, and I feel like it does so much that it could have fallen by the wayside. But what do you feel?
For all the amazing things that Mike Flanagan has done, I mean, this is the crown jewel on the top of a crown jewel on the top of a crown jewel. It is, from acting to the story to the incorporation of Poe's characters in just amazing and beautiful way. The way it updates all of these like terrible ways to die. It is beautiful, and I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, and like I said, it has a lot of homages to different things in the Poe world. With like, there is posters on the wall, there is jewelry in places, there's all kinds of things that you could watch a 40-minute video on just the Easter eggs that they see. It does it like with panache and perfect symbolism, and the fact that it uses like the idea and kind of roots of what Poe was creating. There was a part at the very end when Roderick starts, basically quoting Poe in the Raven on top of the mantle, and like the idea of Lost Lenore. It's so good. It really is. It's so much good stuff. And
yeah,
in the end, it's kind of sucks that he's not staying with Netflix, but I understand that he wants to go off and do different things. And
oh yeah,
I can't wait to see. I think he wants to direct more movies than he directs, TV series. But this is a great way to go out with Netflix, to his next product. So,
and just the love, like, you can tell when something is cared for and nurtured and brought to realization in the best way possible, and this does that. And again, it's
right.
We're brown nosed and hardcore, but it is a truly unique experience. And if you like anything else that he's done, you're gonna love this. Like, it's pinnacle. And he keeps one upping himself. And
right.
even if he, like you mentioned before, what if he has a thing that's not as good? Every director, every person is, not everything is going to be perfect. But if he puts the same care and attention to detail into everything that he does, or even half of what he's done to this point, he's going to have a successful product.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at any of the names. I mean, he has characters that are named after Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Judge John Neo, which is important individual in real life history. But yeah, I mean, it's good stuff. It's
very good stuff.
It's the TV reviews and stuff like that are the only times I give scores, and I'm giving it a perfect 10 out of 10. So
nice.
that's woohoo! Yeah. Yep, it's as great as it comes, and it's going to be a great Halloween watch every year, I think. So,
yeah, agreed.
But anyways, with that said, that is the spoiler discussion for Netflix's The Fall of the House of Usher, the new series from Mike Flanagan. It will premiere on October 12th, the day this review releases. Triv, this has been a long review, but I think it's been worth it. It's been great stuff to talk to you about. I know again you really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, and I think yeah, it's been fun. So with that said, before we head out, you have content. You have content. And before we chop you up into pieces with a pendulum or a pit or whatever, or we burn you alive with acid, or have you die by monkey, where can they find your content?
I'm not sure I want to die by monkey. If anything, just have a black cat push me off of a balcony. If I'm gonna go, I'd rather go by a black cat, I think.
I mean, you have a black cat, so
I do have a black cat. I'm here on YouTube, Trivial Theater. I do random, obscure, straight up bad movies. I do have a couple of things dropping for Halloween. How much of that stuff is actually still kind of up in the air yet, but by the time this drops, I will have put out a collab of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Not specifically spooky month oriented, but still a damn fun time. So definitely check that out, and look forward to seeing you.
Yep, definitely. And as always, you are on the Fifth Dimension of Twilight Zone podcast, which is a fantastical podcast with crazy scenarios with Jacob Anders review.
Yes.
And all that good stuff. So definitely look forward to that. You can find you can find this at Movie Emporium, this review, as well as all my other content. As of this review, I can't remember what I've done because it's posted on a Thursday. So I look forward to something I reviewed at this point. But yeah, thank you once again for watching this. If this is a really long video, which I think it is, maybe I'll post it two videos just to kind of make it easier. But we'll see. So anyways, without further ado, for myself and Triv, we'll see you guys next time on Movie Emporium in our next video, or my next video, I should say. Peace out, guys.
Nevermore. Or are his franchises Nevermore? Can Nick?
What's going on?
Nevermore.